I, Patrick, met the General, Magic Dragon, at Long Binh, Vietnam, while delivering the Army Supply System and intelligence computer tapes from Fort Shafter's CSC pack in Oahu in 1970. My helicopter pilot and I had just barely made it back intact from the northern bases, having helped them from being overrun. The General commended us and made us an offer, on the spot. We signed up. We had to. The General was my commander back in Hawaii. The DIA had its own military arm. It was a phantom limb. All this and more I learned as a fine end to a long and desperate day of flying in a wounded helicopter. Dedication. Somewhere in the darkest night, peace will come as the spirit flies, as we weave a spell by another name, one that causes the hail to fall with the summer rain in the Cambodian jungle. I flee through the jungle as the boy who was once on the cross-country team. Then I will come to you, my love, with the passing of the days, and I will set you free each time, your round-eyed half-bred beauty, to be more appreciated in Hawaii, where east ever meets west and blends, and will remove the chains that bind the heart and the mind. Innocence may die, and wiser men will yet remain the same. But you and I will take our place in time, and find a better way to fly, far beyond the roughest seas. I hear all your whispered dreams, and the endless signs of the ones who loved. They live on in the stars above. Then I will come to you, my love, with the passing of the days, and I will set you free each time. Forward. The Cambodian Rouge were killing the doctors and the professionals, and the General could not take this. His will and valor transferred onto all of us. Come away to fly, we will set them free. I volunteered intelligence agent assistance for ground missions. There was an ebb and flow to the General's prey and charges. There were large successes, like the surprise one I will next describe, although a setback to us at first, we losing several troops and an officer, when stumbling onto such a large Khmer contingent, these followed by failures or lulls in which intelligence was analyzed back in Hawaii, as it was from there that the overall Pacific was commanded. You sped my step, he said to her and to me from here to long ago, whilst everyone attempted to retard it. We were on the wrong side of the river by purpose in Cambodia, which was fine, for we barely existed, with no records kept. We, the intelligence officers, had been inserted along with the DIA, special troops, another nameless non-designation, and they with us, for we each supported the other. The action had been going fairly well as planned. The many opposing rampagers led not so much by reason, but by the beast that was ever part and parcel of man. The fire engagement was over, for now, in the main, as a retreat had been called by the captain of the section upon detection of a larger-than-expected approaching ground force. This fallback being hindered by some opposition stragglers whose spirits had been bolstered by the sight of an entire Khmer Rouge division boldly crossing along an open field, which could become good luck or not for either side. The tail end of our section retreaters was further slowed by the carrying and stretchering of our dead and wounded. Actually, the surprise incursion had gone well enough, but for the fact that we two IAs remaining were now pinned to the ground just inside the front edge of the tree line. For all hell was now breaking loose, shattering the forest trees and their branches. The special troops had just begun their slowed retreat, and we could leave no one behind but ourselves, my major friend and I. The lead Rouge were advancing haphazardly with some old assorted mini-artillery, with an entire battalion or division some ways behind. We would not last where we were, but we had to stay behind for yet another reason. for we were the information and intelligence gatherers when in the field and on the ground. All we had was a machine gun, but a large one, hidden a bit further back in the woods, recently dug out of the ground where we had left it on a prior occasion of recon. Always think many moves ahead. Yet it was not quite the right time to retrieve it and use it, which is of knowing when to move, not just where on the chessboard, for we'd have to be somewhat exposed to use it. Plus, it wouldn't be that useful against the machines firing into our area, and it would draw attention to our troops' retreat path, for the Khmer didn't exactly know where we were, or if any of us still were. Do not show yourself until you have to. We had to survive at least 10 more long minutes. The fire was beginning to converge on us, whether by luck or a good sense of sweep from either side, but not yet straight on, where a medium-sized boulder sat, just up ahead in the grassy field, which was why we had chosen the spot. Do or die. We dashed out and crept up to the big rock, it already having an end, having been just split off. We needed more time. We dug out the ground behind the really big rock a foot or so deep, exposing the part of the boulder yet underground, and laid in the depression. Another minute or so, and the above-ground portions of the rock would be gone, and soon they were shattering and flying away. The enemy would see no one behind the rock, which was no longer there, but just might figure it out. I raised a small bending scope and noted the yet noiseless jets approaching on the horizon, behind the battalion, as well as a vanguard approaching at 600 yards. We needed 60 seconds now, or even half as it turned out. The music played upon the drama. At 30 seconds, the Cambodian enemy first heard the sounds of the jets, crying to all the rest to retreat. Yet some of the vanguard still ran toward our woods, perhaps preferring that over an open field. Not good, neither for us, nor for the special troops that were still retreating through the forest, who could still become targets at the river shore clearing while boarding. At 0 seconds, the airstrike landed on the main battalion, a fine diversion for USIAs. And so we rose from our would-be graves and ran back into the woods, rolling out the machine gun, blasting most of the oncomers away for quite a while. The chess moves had come to pass, although still ongoing and into new territory. The machine gun finally overheated and jammed. We made no pause, which is more of the training, and so we were up and off into the jungle like bats out of hell, not wanting to become meatloaf. The enemy, a bit shocked at the silence, had taken rather too long to give chase, but that they then did, yet still 100 yards off or more. Their bead and their one lucky projection blasting the major to bits and instant death with some great munition just 20 yards behind me. He an older man and of a higher rank, as I was a lieutenant. The rock had been hard, and the road of the trail was long, yet I knew that the general would not leave me behind as long as I was relatively on time and/or could give him some indication that I was alive, pending, of course, the fact that we weren't supposed to be here, and the less attention on it to the world, the better. The arriving enemies at the shore, if more came in greater numbers, could be better dealt with by firing on them from the other side of the river. I reached for the radio, but then remembered that it had been assigned to the major, my mentor and my friend, even though I wasn't even a captain yet, nor now even the total captain of my fate, for the chessboard had now crashed and fallen to the ground. He, this young lieutenant of myself of 50 years ago, believed that luck would never fail. So he ran like the wind through the jungle, surely knowing he had what he'd come for, now hopeful to find the help at the shore. The relentless ones were not far behind, that ill-fated menace of the bad kind.
Misfortune laughed and said, "No road could be too hard to tread, for we are fearless. To those a boon, for they ever seize the opportune."
I see you, fairest happening.
Just past a sharp turn in the trees, he suddenly dropped to his knees and fired into his pursuers, mean as they came upon the scene, using all his ammo but for one round, then hurried on with nary a sound.
I am wide aware, Miss Karma, of this continuing dharma, that chance shines as my sun, for she, in turn, happens on everyone.
Oh, say it is your lot, my friend and lover, she answered back, granting him cover.
Listening, he could hear ever more troops rushing through the night, in groups about a half-mile back, around the loops, far enough away.
I gratefully welcome thee, Miss Lady Luck of Dice, though I may pay a late fee for my pickup so precise.
Miss Destiny's serendipity smiled, saying, "The game is on, we are yet alive and playing, let joy and innocence prevail. Believe that luck will never fail." He moved on, ever faster, cheating lame old death, a third wind becoming of her vaporous breath, it blowing this DIA operative toward to the shore, ever onward. He could hear the whirling chopper, but now receding was its Doppler, he thus grieving of its leaving.
Am I much too late? Still too far? Shall I curse you all, destined stars?
No, said lovely dear twist of fate, for you have one bullet left for chance, not to use to sleep or dream perchance.
The chopper was rising nigh up into the star-crossed sky.
Shall to self I take this bullet now that the bus is left?
Oh no, Miss Lucky Break encouraged. Do not be at all discouraged, for you know it shall not be so, and what with it you now must do.
Yes, perhaps it shall be so in some plight coinciding in a most kempt and hapful night.
He smiled and then knelt to ground and sent his last bright tracer round just ahead of the copter, now departing, his minor wounds yet sorely smarting.
I bless you with all my lucky charms, my good and well-fated man of arms.
The door gunner noted the red tracer and whence it came of the river vapors.
Captain, turn back and take a look. Here awaits a fortuitous accidental fluke. I am an uncursed, non-jinxed agent man. Let my joyous innocence prevail again.
He jumped into the rescue's hovering haven, directing the door gunner's firings waving.
Fare thee well, my knightly knight, Dame Fortune wished upon his sight. You recognize me even in the dark.
Oh, my angel lovely lark, I might have known it was you who would ever see me through.
I see you, fairest happening. Just past a sharp turn in the trees, he suddenly dropped to his knees and fired into his pursuers, mean as they came upon the scene, using all his ammo but for one round, then hurried on, with nary a sound. The chopper was rising nigh up into the star-crossed sky. He smiled and then knelt to ground and sent his last bright tracer round just ahead of the copter, now departing, his minor wounds yet sorely smarting.
Captain, turn back and take a look. Here awaits a fortuitous accidental fluke.
He jumped into the rescue's hovering haven, directing the door gunner's firings waving.
wrong side of the river by purpose in Cambodia, which was fine, for we barely existed, with no records kept. We were in the wrong place to one of our rare mishaps, as it turned out, and actually one very early on, born of a cascade of unfortunate events that were not totally unplanned for. Always have an out, for there will be those times of war. We always have an out, for there will be those times of war. Intelligence officers have been inserted along with the DIA special troops, another nameless non-designation, and they with us, for we supported the other. The action had been going fairly well, as planned. The many opposing rampage had not so much by reason, but by the beast that was ever part and parcel of man. The fire engagement was over, for now in the main as a retreat had been called by the captain of the section. Upon detection of a larger than expected approaching ground force. This fallback being hindered by some opposition stragglers, whose spirits had been bolstered by the sight of an entire Khmer division boldly crossing along an open field, which could become good luck or not for either side. The tail end of our section retreaters was further slowed by the carrying and stretchering of the dead and wounded. Actually, the surprise incursion had gone well enough, but for the fact that we two IAs remaining were now pinned to the ground, just inside the front edge of the tree line. For all hell was breaking loose, shattering the forest trees and their branches. The special troops had just begun their slow retreat, and we could leave no one behind but ourselves, my major friend, and I. The labors were advancing haphazardly with some old assorted mini artillery, with an entire battalion or division some ways behind. We would not last where we were, but we had to stay behind for yet another reason. For we were information intelligence gatherers when in the field and on the ground. All we had was a machine gun, but a large one hidden a bit further back in the woods. recently dug out of the ground, where we had left it on a prior occasion of reckoning. Always think many moves ahead. It was not quite right time to retrieve it and use it, which is of knowing when to move, not just where, on the chessboard. For we'd have to be somewhat exposed to use it. Plus it wouldn't be that useful against the machines firing into our area, and it would draw attention to our troops' retreat path. For the cover didn't exactly know where we were, or if any of us still were. Not show yourself until you have to. We had to survive at least 10 more long minutes. The fire was beginning to converge on us, whether by luck or a good sense of sweep from either side, but not yet straight on, where a medium-sized boulder sat just up ahead in the grassy field, which was why we had chosen the spot. Or die, we dashed out and crept up to the big rock. It's already having an end, having been just split off. We needed more time. We dug out the ground behind the really big rock, a foot or so deep, exposing the part of the boulder yet underground. It laid in the depression. Another minute or so, and the above-ground portions of the rock would be gone, and soon they were shattering and flying away. Behind the rock, which was no longer there, but just might figure it out. I raised a small bending scope and noted the yet noiseless jets approaching on the horizon behind the battalion, as well as a vanguard approaching at 600 yards. We needed 60 seconds now, or even half. As it turned out, the music played upon the drama. At 30 seconds, the enemy first heard the sounds of the jets, crying to all the rest to retreat, yet some of the vanguard still ran toward our woods, perhaps preferring that over an open field. Not good neither for us nor for the special troops that were still retreating through the forest, who could still become targets at the river shore, clearing while boarding. At 0 seconds, the airstrike landed on the main battalion, a fine diversion for us. Yes, and so we rose from our would-be graves and ran back into the woods, rolling out the machine gun, blasting most of the oncomers away for quite a while. The chess moves had come to pass, although still ongoing, and into new territory. The machine gun finally overheated and jammed. We made no pause, which is more of the training. And so we were up and off into the jungle like bats out of hell, not wanting to become meatloaf. Shocked at the silence, I begged them rather too long to give chase. But that they then did, yet still 100 yards off or more their beat, and there one lucky projection blasting the major to bits, and instant death with some great munition. Just 20 yards behind me, he an older man and of a higher rank, as I was a lieutenant. The rock had been hard, the road of the trail was long. Yet I knew that the general would not leave me behind. As long as I was relatively on time, and or could give him some indication that I was alive pending. Of course, the fact that we weren't supposed to be here, and the less attention on it, the better the arriving enemies at the shore. If more came in greater numbers, could be better dealt with by firing on them from the other side of the river. I reached for the radio, but then remembered that it had been assigned to the major, my mentor and my friend, even though I wasn't even a captain yet. No, not even the total captain of my fate. For the chessboard had now crashed and fallen to the ground.
To tread, for we are fearless to those who, for they ever seize the opportune.
just happening. Just past a sharp turn in the trees, he suddenly dropped to his knees and fired into his pursuers' me. As they came upon the scene, using all his ammo, but for one round then hurried on with nary a sound. I am wide aware, Miss Karma, of this continuing Dharma, that chance shines as my sun. For she, in turn, happens on every word. She answered back, granting him cover. Listening, he could hear more troops rushing through the night in groups. About a half-mile back around the loops, far enough away, I gratefully welcome thee. This lady luck of dice, though I may pay a late fee for my kick-up so precise. His destiny, serendipity smiled, saying,
Here is on, we are yet alive and play. Let joy and innocence prevail. Believe that luck will never fail.
I flee through the jungle as the boy who was once on the cross-country team. Then I will come to you, my love, with the passing of the days, and I will set you free each time. Your round-eyed half-bred beauty to be more appreciated in Hawaii, where east ever meets west and blends, and will remove the chains that bind the heart and the mind. Ever faster, reaching name old death, a third wind becoming of her vapor spread. A glowing mist I operative torch to the shore. Ever onward he could hear the whirling chopper, but now receding was its doubler. He thus grieved much too late, still too far. Shall I curse you all, destined stars?
A sad, lovely dear twist of fate, for you have one bullet left for a chance not to use to sleep or dream perchance.
But the top was rising nigh up into the star-crossed sky. Shout to self, I take this bullet now that the boss has left.
Oh no, this lucky break encouraged. Do not be at all discouraged, for you know it shall not be so, and what with it you now must do.
Yes, perhaps it shall be so in some plight, coinciding in a most kempt and hapful night. He smiled and then knelt to ground, and sent his last bright trace around just ahead of the copter now departing. His minor wounds yet sorely smarting.
Smoother for my lucky charms, my good and well-fated man of arms.
I've arms there of arms. The door gonna noted the red tracer, and whence it came of the river vapors. Captain, turn back and take a look. Here awaits a fortuitous accidental fluke. I am an uncursed, non-jinxed agent man. Let my joyous innocence prevail again. We jumped into the rescue's hovering haven, directing the Dorga's fiery raven.
If ever you were my nightly knight, Dame Fortune wished upon his sight. You recognized me even in the dark.
Oh, my angel, lovely lark, I might have known it was you who'd ever see me through. You spared my step, he said, to her and to me from here too long ago. Why's everyone attempted to retard it? as even now the four winds are ever warning of the reports of the last resort, of the tip of the iceberg that has now globally warmed away, for spring is sprung in spurs, and it is yet of the joy that never left. I met the dire general, magic dragon had long by Vietnam, while I was delivering the army supply system and intelligence computer takes from Fort Shafter, CSC, Arkano. My pilot and I had just barely made it back intact from the northern bases. The general commended us and made us an offer on the spot. We signed out. The die had its own military arm. It was a phantom limb. All this and more I learned as a fine end to a long and desperate day of flying in a wounded helicopter. Nonsense may die, and wiser men will yet remain the same, but you and I will take our place in time and find a better way to fly. Far beyond the roughest seas, I hear all your whispered dreams and the endless signs of the ones who love. They live on in the stars above. Then I will come to you, my love, with the passing of the days, and I will set you free each time.
Beneath the moon's soft glow, in the forest where wisdom does grow, silent streams reflecting stars, gentle gleam, and nature's breath, the soothing east.
We retrieved what was left of the Major. A ceremony was held at the Oahu Punch Bowl, a volcanic crater that is the national cemetery of the Pacific. I hardly recognized the general in his full dress uniform. He spoke, ending with a famous saying, changing it a bit. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, for it tolls for all of us. His helicopter later landed in Fort Shafter, on the grass in the center of Palm Circle, causing quite a stir, but indeed, here he was, the official commander. And not the man who never was. All is never as it seems. Your guys came through for me in a heck of a turnaround.
Indeed, I was almost the late Austin, but for a Lukish, luckish wind that carried me on its wings.
But for that, you would have been on time for your funeral.
Good one, General, but I am now reborn to punctuality.
That you are. What do you make of this so-called enemy that cuts down all the professional doctors and others of such high caliber?
They are steeled and will never know until the end draws nigh.
The pity that man is yet an infant species.
We see many good and bad things directly, person to person, via the actual.
Such are the good civil laws and good human values taught.
The problem becomes when we see from no direction but the imagined via the unreal.
These good things, merely pronounced, also define their bad counterpart.
One then forgets their source, leaping into adoption, becoming with them one. Thus the ideas must be protected.
Anger arises toward the contrary, as emotion stains the brain.
Then evil is done in the name of good.
And all these good things eventually come to a bloody end.
Yes, all of these good things
Must come to an end.
must come to an end. Say and do what you will before it's too late.
Good word, soldier. Any hostile casualties?
An accurate count of 106 plus up to 20 indeterminate from the chopper fire upon its departure, plus an uncountable but large number from the airstrike.
How do you feel about all that?
What was there in the bloody end was there in the healthy beginning. I am fine about it.
About what I thought?
Yes, you knew?
I figured. Then what was left of them were drawn to you. It was so effective, but not very good for one's health, yet unavoidable. Your tardiness is excused.
Thank you, sir.
Sir is not required here, but I'll take it as a compliment. Since our unit does not exist, the use of sir could become a bad habit that continues in public.
Thank you, sir.
That night the time hears from the general shift in 22 candidates.
He did what?
I called in an airstrike on the Khmer Division, and that was not exactly the initial plan for the extra ammo.
He knows about the airstrike, non-sir. Perhaps he is on the way. He bought us time, and he has run this course before.
Ah yes, how did I know of that non-happening? The general paced the shore, knowing that but 60 seconds remained. He had a feeling that his new captain would be on time this time. You're 1 second early, my good man. They both clambered into the top hatch while the submarine submerged its bulk. I didn't want to have to shoot at the sub to ping it. Are you sure you don't want to go back to hang out and use up the rest of your time? No, it's really rather unpleasant out there. So, what happened at the end? Nothing happened there or anywhere else around here. Please, humor me. From what I could see back through the woods with the third eye in the back of my head, but mostly heard with my ears, was that the airstrike was dead on target. Lucky for you, I live on luck. Probability has no memory, Major. Major? Yes, and that is as far as you go if you wish, for anything beyond that is rather mostly a desk job with no desk. Agreed, but how is it that you are out here in the field? As for me, my desk does not exist. That's the clean desk policy. So then of what use is a desk if nothing can be placed upon it? None at all whatsoever in any way. Good answer, in triplicate. Now come to think of it, I haven't noted any colonels about. We don't have any colonels, it's the economy. And no desks? None. There have been several cutbacks in middle management. Because we need a quick response team. Yes, indeed. So the big gun still worked? Yes, but it jammed again, toward the end of its ammo. Jammed! Darn piece of junk. I will find a new supplier. So, staying there longer would have made you late? No, I would have made up the time. Yes, indeed. I've written the full report. I'll read it. The new action with Section 2 went fairly well. Section 2 was now into the sub, it casting off ballast. The Section 2 leader finally arriving and telling the general of for whom the bell may have tolled, while he oversaw the stowage of his wounded. He did what? I called in an airstrike on the Khmer division. And that was not exactly the initial plan for the extra ammo.
He knows about the airstrike, non-sir. Perhaps he is on the way.
Ah yes, how did I know of that non-happening? The general paced the shore, knowing that but 60 seconds remained. He had a feeling that his new captain would be on time this time. You're 1 second early, my good man. They both clambered into the top hatch while the submarine submerged its bulk. The Philippines. Section 1 had been already pre-staged to provide support. An official not to be named in the Philippine Armed Forces had reviewed the information and had approved the DIA assassination mission. The general and his new major flew tourist class over Leyte Gulf towards Manila, getting to know one another deeper.
General, since we never wear insignia, would it be too forward of me to inquire how many invisible stars you have on?
No sweat, for one must know the total situation. 7 stars.
Well, if we consider that the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, then this seems to give him the equivalence of 6 stars. So are you somehow higher than him, but wouldn't you still have to report to the Pentagon and/or the president?
Glad you asked, Major. The Pentagon reports to me in a sense, although they don't know it, for I received their defense intelligence directly. As for the president, while he gave me the initial authorization, he does not wish to be informed, except in certain rare cases. Thus, in a way, I am indeed above the president.
This is all so that there are no paper trails, emails, desks, phone messages.
His phone line can be ultra-secured when it needs to be, but he really does rather more enjoy reading about some of the events in the newspaper. As for us, there are no medals, commendations, or any kind of mention whatsoever in any way.
It's amazing that a part of the military has gone paperless.
We still have some in the bathrooms.
Suppose, you happen to overdo some questionable assignments in some persistent fashion.
Assassins might eventually hunt me down.
Might?
If they could find me.
General, I wouldn't have to call you General if I knew your name.
Well, we don't use real names here, and I don't even know your full name either. This prevents any torturers who may get a hold of us from learning anything about that.
Do you have a stage name?
Yes, I was going to say that you could call me Magic Dragon. I will call you Quester. These are code names that are just between us.
The president must have a lot of trust in you.
If I have earned it, then he has it.
Do we ever take out heads of state?
No, but the CIA can now do that.
Does the CIA have a 7-star general?
No, for they are somewhat more accountable.
And they focus more on espionage and politics?
Indeed, while we focus on military defense. There is some overlap, however.
The plane was landing.
I'll see you on the other end, Dragon.
Hope so, Quester. You do know that there are sometimes hidden variables that can arise in these far and foreign missions?
Yes, for this is not so straightforward as crossing the border into Cambodia from Vietnam.
True. And while the Philippines is a friendly ally with US, it's not like they can all be in the know, excepting for my contact there.
The Major bid farewell to General Magic Dragon and switched to another plane that would take him far to the south, then a ferry to Mindanao, a region of over 7,000 islands. After hiking for a few miles in the dark, the Major located a box containing a sniper rifle just where it was supposed to be and loaded it. Halfway up a hill, he had a decent view of the Philippine Army outpost. He settled in and waited for the glow of tropical dawn. At the hint of twilight dawn, the Major, or Quester as we may call him, spotted his target's office, it having the man's rank on it. of all the stupid things to do. It was time, for the target was coming out for his morning stroll alone, another silly move. The shots rang clear and true, and the man was no more. As one might imagine, some troops came running out, heading for the fallen man. He then disassembled the rifle and packed it, and headed off very slowly, but with much stealth, toward the path road blocked by many obstacles. A few minutes later, he was surprised to receive a call.
This is Magic Dragon. There is a problem. The Muslims are unexpectedly on the move, and the Philippine army has made a wild guess, hitting the nail on the head, and is now heading right for your road. There will soon be eyes everywhere, even above, so your ground pickup plan has been aborted.
Yes, I am.
Good, for they are not quite on to you exactly yet, for you are just the receiver of this call. They can try to trace us, but not you. However, they will never find us.
That's the extent of the plan. Run like hell?
Ready, get set, go!
Quester was off and did about 2 miles in about 10 minutes, then slowed and stopped for a look about the ridge. To the north, a tank from the army outpost was clearing the obstacles from the beginning of the path road. To the south could be seen some Muslim helicopters warming up. He noted swamps everywhere, a bit inland on both sides of the path. They would be infested with dengue fever. Wherefore is the vaporous lady, who rains good fortune upon me. Her portal to the net must yet be broken. Probability has regained its memory and spoken, and yet a spirit in my feet still leads me, who knows how, to her chamber window, sweet, or 'tis closed or run out now, the VAP. Wherefore is the vaporous lady who rains good fortune upon me, and yet a spirit in my feet still leads me, who knows how. The vaporous airs, they faint on the dawn, the silent stream, the nightingale's complaint, it dies upon her breast. Oh, lift me from the grass, I die, I faint, I fail. My cheek is cold and white, alas, my heart beats loud and fast. Was Magic Dragon just going to leave me here, whether intentionally or because now he had to? Besides, the Filipino troops were fine, and the successor to the dead general was a very good man. So you must not be frightened if a sadness rises up before you larger than any you have ever seen. You must think that something is happening with you, that life has not forgotten you, that it holds you in its hand.
It's all turning to shit. I'm going to be surrounded soon. I know when all is lost. It's okay. That's the breaks.
Indeed, they have you surrounded, but only in 2 dimensions. Get off the trail slightly. You have about 5 minutes to dig a hole. The mud is soft.
What a surprise, Magic. Why didn't you tell me?
Because we've never tried it before.
Ah, good one. I do believe in magic now, and so I do fully trust you, Dragon General Magician.
Shit happens, Quester. Or almost did. Nothing is for sure in this business.
General Jackson Magic Johnson, or whatever your name might be, you remember my record 2-mile running part? It was not entirely that much fun.
The DIA, run by its hands-on General Magic Dragon, had a military arm of its own, but could also call upon any of the armed services. And so it was in a near overreaching operation deep inside Cambodia that the Marines and their long-distance choppers were employed along with US IAs. That they all had their targets pinpointed ahead of time was always the best strategy, but even more so for this mission since they could only engage for about 30 minutes and still have enough fuel to make it back from where they weren't even supposed to be. It all went well enough, but near the end a report of a well-hidden supply depot complex came in. We, more as the IA observers, still had firepower left, as well as more fuel, we being only 3, including the pilot. And so we elected to veer off to investigate, meaning to put the place out of business. While the copter fleet turned and headed back toward Vietnam, we found the depot site and sent most of our missiles into it. But, just as we were preparing to leave, took a really bad hit from something very luckily or accurately fired from the ground. We were in a half-controlled descent, our power gone but the rotors still whirling from the downward rush, which would end neither in a soft nor a full crash landing, but tending toward hard, which was slightly less than a crash. We saw the depot's ammo dump blow very large and sky-high, and although this destroyed all the guards and forces on the ground, we were coming down about 600 meters in front of the blast. The jungle for kilometers around would soon be in flames. I tightened my belts and closed my side door. We seemed to land upright, but it was much too fast and hard, and so we tipped and rolled. The main rotor broke and sliced through the pilot's cabin, killing him instantly. The other door gunner's belts broke or were cut, and he flew out, the copter crushing him beneath it. I released my belts and climbed out my door, which was now on the top of the heap. Wondering how long it would be before any curious or angry enemies would come to see what had happened to their supply depot. I had to get through the inferno, on to the other side of the depot where every road would lead toward home. I moved laterally, about a quarter-kilometer north, the heat still very intense, even backing off somewhat at times, and there it was, a gap in the flames, possibly due to a wet, swampy area. This was not a time to wait around, and so I endured the heat while splashing through the wetland, latrine sewer or whatever it was, running until the air was bearable, then dropped to the ground and looked around for a while. Monsoon season had not yet begun, and so the jungle, though always moist, was relatively dry. It was all catching fire so quickly that it threatened to engulf me within a matter of minutes in this firestorm of all hells. Projectiles would soon fill the air. There were 2 one-lane paths serving as roads coming into the back of the loading docks. From the tire marks and their dirt chutes, it seemed that I was on the inbound path, and then I saw a signpost, its unreadable wordage on the other side, facing away from me, confirming this to be the path for arrivals. I don't like taking a path that has incoming traffic, and so I would soon cut through the jungle a short way to get on the outbound path, which no one else would be traversing for quite a while. Meanwhile, I placed explosives and a tripwire on the inbound path. I tried to call the copter fleet on my ground radio, but got nothing but static. Well, there was no climbable canopy that I could be plucked off of anyway. I was on my own. Apparently no one knew yet. Over 100 kilometers to go. Had to put some distance in between while I was still fresh and energized, but not overdo it. Then walk on steadily only through the deepest night and sleep long by day. For not only could the jungle day roast one alive, but the Khmer Rouge might be about. I checked my boots. I like tight boots, for they give a better feel for the ground and one can't always see too well at night. I tightened them. One boot had a slight cut. I patched it with all-purpose tape. The sun was setting. This was the last evening that I'd use for travel. I just didn't want to stick around the scene. I walked briskly through the night when possible, still high on adrenaline, but kept 10 meters off to the side of the path. I heard a truck, oncoming from ahead, its driver unaware of the traffic pattern, which was common in the third world. I dropped and froze, my camouflage making me part of the foliage. Sunrise was nigh. I headed into the jungle to find a place to sleep, finding 2 good places, but proceeding on to a third, just to be safe. I slept 12 hours through that steamy day, in the most shade I could find. I didn't resist the heat and the sweat, but made friends with them. I would spend the next 2 hours refilling it by swiping dew from the broad leaves. I had not come across any good water sources yet. I surveyed my equipment. Most of it had remained. 1 small pack of explosives, a pistol, a knife, a useless radio, 2 more days of MREs, no ID as usual, spare socks, bullets, jungle ills, pills, matches, some coins, a pad and pen for taking intelligence notes, antiseptic, a small flare, and a survival pamphlet. Then I heard the Rouge out there, probably out on a local recon to secure the night around their camp. At midnight, I was off. I might manage to go 7-8 kilometers a night on average, considering the slow-going portions. I began to slowly add edible vegetation to my diet, as there are reasons to eat other than taste. All went well for 2 more nights and days, the jungle food fully supporting me now, but now I was stuck. A whole Khmer division was getting on the move somewhere nearby. I stayed glued to my deep spot for 3 days, until they were long gone, which gave me more time that I needed to think, and so I thought about everything. First about my journey. It was really beyond me how I would ever make it, for after the long jungle trek there would be too many villages and clearings before I could get to the river and swim across it. Well, all I had to do was to travel unseen, quite an unlikely proposition. It was not that long ago that I was a 16-year-old boy who had filled the walls of his room with scenes of faraway places from National Geographic magazine, and now I was, well, really far away. Well, of course, Magic Dragon would know that a helicopter had been lost. Strangely, it had not blown up right away, but the fuel was leaking, and it would go to blazes, and this within a larger blaze, erasing all trace of it. He would indeed know where we were headed. We both knew that he could not have come to me there, and that I wouldn't have stuck around anyway. This forced rest was good for me, for my legs had been dehydrating, just as what could happen when playing a long match of tennis on a hot day. It had been days since I'd found the last rivulet, and the dew could not keep up with my needs. And then it rained for a day, which was as cooling and refreshing as one could imagine. It seemed that I drank gallons of it. I was restored to my old self just in time to move on with a full canteen. 4 more days passed. I was becoming energized by the walking, though perhaps having lost about 7 pounds. Night was my friend. I could even see the stars sometimes, those ancient fires of home. We are those stars, I thought, but what the heck was I doing on a planet with so many war zones? Every so often I would stop and listen, to hear them before they heard me. Nothing usually. Then a mother and her children at a watering hole up ahead, even though it was late evening. I too, now again desperately needed water. I waited, but ever more villagers kept coming. After an hour of no one, I drank. A woman appeared suddenly, quickly running off when she saw me. The whole village would soon know. So, I backtracked for many kilometers, erasing half of my recent progress. They would still pursue me, though, eventually. So I headed deep into the jungle at a left angle to the road path. Just before dawn, I intersected the path that I had once identified as the inbound path to the depot. Well, what else could I do but take it? I was known on the other path, but this would soon turn into a legend left far behind. I stepped up my pace, expecting to pay dearly for it in lost energy. I found a sleeping spot, this time making sure it was 4 times removed from the path, then collapsed, exhausted and full of thirst, sleeping 16 hours. The rains saved me again. I floated awake and drank the elixir from the sky. It took me another day to regain my strength, aided by the untasty jungle salad. I walked for 3 more nights, and then the jungle began to thin. I went back in and sat there for a day, not wanting to leave it. I needed a miracle. Another day and night went by. I was tired anyway. I had a Cambodian hat that I'd found along the way somewhere, but my skin was not the right tone, although I could possibly work on it. I would have to find the right clothes too. Yet it wasn't going to work, for people might approach me, and then the jig would be up. A better scheme would have to present itself. I was a bit lost in the jungle's heart of darkness that was called the rainforest to soften its menace. Now I had to find the trailhead where the path resumed after a large and recently cleared open field that the Khmer were going to use for something. It wasn't a place to be seen wandering through, for one, nor wasting time trying to find an entrance that was probably covered by bush, for two. I needed information. I waited for hours, no Khmer. I waited some more. Then way across the large clearing, some lynx-like cats came out from the jungle, and I made note of the spot. Here I would find the continuing trail. I dashed across, and there it was. I entered, all the jungle noises resuming, the odor of dead vegetation returning. I walked on for about 5 kilometers. I shouldn't out during the day, but I was out of water and also needed to put some distance in on the path. A few kilometers later, the bird sound suddenly stopped, and so I rushed silently off the side of the trail, deep into the rainforest. The birds knew that someone was coming, which may have been just me, but they had tolerated me so far, so it had to be a group. I never found out who they were, but they had to be peasants or enemy military. I camped for the rest of the day at the 5th good spot off the trail, taking no chances. I emerged 4 hours after sundown. From here on, every path would lead me more towards home. The ground was getting spongy. Large banyan trees began to appear, as well as cedar and cypress. A swamp was near, but so then might be dengue fever. This drainage basin from the mountains of what were really very large hills would have good stream water up ahead, beyond the deadwood, and so it did, the place looking harmlessly pleasant and sylvan, here in the land of the killing fields. I crossed a rock field to gain the stream, deftly jumping from one to another, which seemed safer than walking slowly. I could not misstep. An ankle injury would doom me. Here I drank and stopped a while to allow time for rehydration. I would need more than information to carry me to the river, after which Vietnam began. But perhaps the general and his DIA troops were out there somewhere. But I heard no rotors. Coincidence was too much to hope for. From the bird's eye view at the top of the mountain, I would plot my next 50 kilometers onto the horizon, keeping out of sight. Last night I had accidentally walked right into a temple, but it turned out to be a deserted ruin. I was still as fit as my younger self, who was on the track team too, but here I was on the trail of madness and death. Nothing happened for a few days, and then I heard the choppers, about a kilometer to the north. My radio had gotten soggy. It was now more than useless. I took off like a bat out of hell, remaining well inside the edge of the jungle. The choppers had found the Rouge and were engaging them near the village they were taking. When it looked like they were just about finished mopping up, I told myself, this is it, do or die. And so I sent up the flare. since they might think it was some kind of a trap. I ran out and presented myself in the open, in my mud-dried fatigues, and gave the special salute, done with both hands at once. They circled, looking closer, but wary. I brought up both arms and hands to my forehead in salute time and time again. I used my knife to carve some letters into the ground, my short-form ID. They looked. I waited, and waited some more. They landed. Now I will always wonder if I could have made it through the villages and clearings at night. When the fleet landed back at Magic Dragon's field command and he came out to inquire about the mission, the pilot rushed over, acting puzzled, relating that while no one had been lost, they seemed to have gained someone.
Quester, you're late again, but I'm considering it as leave time to make up for it. Welcome back. It was that woman near the drinking hole who told everyone, and thereby me as well, for I have ears everywhere. I knew you would switch to the other path. Come out, wherever you are, and join me in my tent for a drink.
Long before all this, in Oak Park, Illinois, I was a student. One by one, my friends from high school who hadn't gone on to college had died in Vietnam, while I was obtaining a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Engineering in the new field of computer science. The years went by and my best friend Joe returned safely from the ongoing war, telling me all the gory details and also how to be an effective helicopter door gunner.
Don't sweep from the direction behind the fleeing enemies and into them, but sweep from ahead of them and back into them, so that the leads don't escape, so that they all may run into your fire.
I doubted if I would ever need this information, since my college deferment was holding up fine, and surely the war would end soon. I graduated college and worked for IBM for a year or so, and then the dreaded draft notice finally came in January 1970. I flew the tapes of the Army supply and intelligence systems into Long Bin, installing them there, after having done the same in Okinawa. We were grounded until the next day's morning, due to rockets landing within the fort.
Our previous heli was shot down, all perishing. We have a substitute ship and a new pilot, me. We are clear to go alone.
It wasn't the best helicopter, but it functioned and was armed at the doors and had cannon in front. We had made one installation and were on to the next when we took some fire from the ground somewhere. We had a fuel leak and some smoke. We headed towards the nearest fire base for an analysis and repairs, although there was no answer from them. Upon descension, we discovered that the base had been overrun. They were soon firing at us and the copter strained to ascend, the pilot emptying his cannons. Yet, the onslaught continued. I looked at the pilot and said, "I can do this." And so I took to the left door gun and emptied it into the North Vietnamese troops, putting the box of tapes in front of my legs and feet for more protection. We were ascending, but still within range, so the pilot rotated the ship, and I took to the right door gun, our limited ammo soon running out. I then fired a few useless shots with my pistol. Thanks, Joe. As we cleared the area, and our ship limped very many miles to the next fire base, from which we got an answer and a fine welcome. I had but a minor scratch. I had arrived in the war zone, seemingly the twilight zone. So it was that the DIA general had read the warrant officer's report and had appreciated our initiative, and so we were invited to meet with the wizard. I signed up. My life had completely changed in a day. The CSC PAC unit I ended up in after my selective service draft expands to Computer Systems Command for the Pacific Theater. It was located on Palm Circle, back toward the rear gate of Fort Shafter, on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, and was composed of Special Army, Civil Service, and DIA spooks, it being home base for the Army supply system, intelligence, and nuclear concerns. There was no internet, for this was long before Al Gore claimed to have invented it. These days, I believe the place is still called CSC, but as Computer Sciences Corporation. It was also computer security concerns at some point. Since I had college learning yet fresh in my mind, as well as a year at IBM, I did well on the Army tests and so was able to choose my destination and duty, even though drafted. The captain, back at my basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, had pulled me off of a nearly departing bus bound for my initial and apparently provisional advanced training in artillery at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, an order that had taken all this time, weeks actually, to get changed. He said I was going to work on a nuclear reactor. Well, that wasn't quite it, or even close. I remained as a drill sergeant for a month before the Army got their act more together on the new order. The Oakland, California transfer station was both hell and boredom for a while, as I guarded a dumpster at night lest anyone steal uniforms, although having become a Spec 4 already, and then several days later a noisy cargo transport took us, some tanks and munitions, onto Honolulu. We put in our earplugs. It was glorious, flowered, waterfalled, and tropical, that open-air international airport terminal, with the breathless surroundings plainly revealed just outside the unglassed wall portals. Little did I know then that I was seeing a mountain off in the distance where I would build a retreat, just a tent at first, but where I would first think about the theory of everything at night under the stars. Spurning the barracks after a few days, which were RA, regular Army, and therefore wild, and before further OCDIA training, I moved into a waterfront Waikiki apartment. They had given me the first 3 weeks off. Meanwhile, and even in between my training at the hardcore Shawfield Barracks, I enjoyed some vacation trips to the Army bases in the Far East, some dangerous and some not, delivering computer tape updates of the Army supply and intelligence systems. It was and was not a big deal, but they surely didn't want any of this stuff to fall into the wrong hands, which would only be the Chinese or the Russians, the North Vietnamese probably not even knowing what a computer was for. The previous courier had been just shot down and none of the civil service guys having families wanted to go, so they and all said,
Hey, let's send Austin so he can get a taste of the theater of operations.
The first trip to South Korea was rather uneventful, but for having to take a train 300 miles south from Seoul to Daegu and Busan, and then an ox cart from the train. I enjoyed the odor of the open sewage canals alongside the street, saw bicycles piled 6 feet high with crates, noted the complete disorder of all traffic, saw 1,000 Buddhas gazing upon me, and had suits and leather coats made for but a few dollars. No one tried to steal the tapes. To avoid the barracks of the ROK, Republic of Korea troops, I stayed at a sort of bed and breakfast for the long time, not the short time, and ended up purchasing Cho's life from her farmer stepfather for $300, since her mother, the madam, had been expecting her to soon start working there. Her actual father was a GI in the Korean War. All thought that her round eyes made her look strange, but that was only from their cultural view. She looked fine, even beautiful. We entered the US and Guam and settled her in Hawaii in my mountain retreat of a cave. But that's another story. On my next trip to Long Bin and places north, I met the DIA general. I would later transfer into CSG, called Computer Support Group, but the computer part was really counterinsurgency. I walked over to the mysterious compound across Palm Circle and on into the building. No security. They were indeed mostly civilians, but for 3 privates.
Head, you were coming. Sorry for the delay back at Fort Polk. We were finishing up your background check. You're clean as a fish from the White River in Mississippi.
Happy to be here, Lieutenant.
Glad you could join us. I'll show you around. This here's the computer programming area.
He introduced me to a Mr. Freeman there, an ordinary-looking American, along with his shapely Oriental secretary, who seemed part Japanese, and then to Ben, the computer leader person. We headed down a hallway.
Mr. Freeman runs this place, at least for what happens in computer programming over there. Out in the field, you'll be on your own, although loosely under the General's umbrella, which you probably won't even have to deal with. But if he needs you for anything, he'll find you.
What general is that, Lieutenant?
Just the commander of the entire Pacific region. He's based here, but he's hardly ever here.
We then went into a kind of map room that showed various locations throughout Indochina.
Here we gather intelligence from the field.
They had but one terminal, with a large screen with a few civilians gathered around it. Wonder how they got that.
I'll show you more next time.
More back rooms?
Yeah.
The sergeant gave me 2 weeks off.
Great. That means he likes you. You might want to check out our computer center just down the way.
We went outside and he pointed to it. The lieutenant lit up a smoke and offered me one.
Times are a bit slow this week, which is good, for when they move, they really move.
You're not really a lieutenant-type lieutenant.
I'm higher. Hey, you're the first to catch on to that right off. Although when I'm here at this compound, I'm a lieutenant. What gave it away?
The Computer Science Center supporting logistics and supply is real enough, but it's also a front for intelligence, which need is also routine enough, but it probably has an operating arm, which is where the missing soldiers are, and the newest, perhaps getting trained or briefed at Schofield Barracks or somewhere else.
Very good. And me?
You're above Mr. Freeman, and he's probably a GS-11 with Ben as a GS-9.
What else?
You're not a good old boy from Mississippi, since your affect is not through and through. Tennessee, maybe. Your grandfather's from France.
Hey, good. Kentucky. I'll have to work on my Deep South thing some more. We're doing a big last push now. You're going to do okay here. Welcome.
It's some kind of a miracle.
Yeah, and that's our job too. Ben needs someone in 5 or 6 weeks to bring our update tapes to Korea. Your Army ID will serve as your passport. Wait for Ben to bring it up. He just lost a good friend in a helicopter crash in Vietnam. Our previous courier, your predecessor.
I'll do it, and the other runs too.
Thanks. I was going to ask you. And you get points for volunteering first, but otherwise, we're planning to keep you mostly in software here. But other needs could arise.
Sounds good, Major. See you in 2 weeks.
I am that, and I might have been a colonel. But we don't have those in this area, because those pencil pushers would only get in the way of the action, which is what we're all about.
I walked over to the computer center and went inside. I saw Vince coming out. He was but a private first class and very young. There were some Oriental ladies in the office. They sent me on into the computer room. They didn't have an IBM machine. It was an RCA Spectra 70.
What assembler language does this thing use?
The same as IBM's, but this machine is cheaper.
Wait till Mike hears this one, I thought.
Does this process the input cards in real time, or do the cards decks get put onto disk first?
In real time?
So then the computer has to spend time doing nothing but waiting for new decks to be loaded, for they don't get cached.
Yeah, I guess.
What's the name of the random access disk?
B2.
I key punched a 4-line program and then made a copy of it.
It's called CDRA for Card to Random Access. Run it once and then you can put as many card decks in as you like, not having to wait for each one to finish computing as before.
Okay, thanks. I'll try it.